members and guests. I am so glad you all could join us. I'm NOIAW member Giovanna D. Biccari. Today we have Denise Salvatore Garofalo, registered dietitian nutritionist, who's going to talk to us about innovative at-home cooking, including tips and recipes that'll enable us to maximize the use of available at-home ingredients while minimizing store trips. And in case you missed it, Denise was with us 2 weeks ago. So we're so happy to have her back. Hi, Denise. How are you?
Hi, great. Thank you. Pleasure to be back.
Okay, thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to be learning today.
Well, today will be chock full of what I hope is useful information. You may want to have a piece of paper and a pen by your side. I'll be giving you some lists. And in light of the fact that we are in a pandemic, hopefully a little bit on the way out, but not so much so that we can throw all caution to the wind because we don't have our inoculations yet. But because of the pandemic, we're home a lot. We're cooking, we're eating, we're washing pots. We may be sick of all of that, but we still have to eat. So I'm going to address quick and easy one-pot dishes.
Okay.
I'm going to really be addressing what I call concocting, which is finding something in your refrigerator and turning it into something that you enjoy eating.
It sounds almost like a scavenger hunt.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, it seems like we've already got a lot of products and ingredients in our refrigerators or our pantries at home that just go unused. So how can we become less wasteful and actually make great nutritious meals that, you know, from what we have at home?
So in the process of concocting, well, we have it easy with Google, but I had a carrot in my refrigerator that I knew was a big, juicy, local grown garden carrot that I didn't want to waste. And I said, what can I do with this carrot? So I called my daughter, who makes a fabulous bolognese, and I knew she put carrot in her bolognese. So basically I turned it into a bolognese because I had a ground meat in my freezer. So ground meat of some sort is going to be on the shopping list that I provide to the viewers later in this talk. So I started out by sauteing some onions and garlic, shaved the carrot into the onions and garlic, got that tender, threw in a can of tomato sauce, which will also be on the shopping list, let that simmer, and then threw in this particular case, it happened to be ground turkey, which I seem to be using more of these days in my effort to reduce animal fat and saturated fat. Not that I'm exclusively into that. I like a steak here and there, and I like a good juicy cheeseburger, but those are less frequent. So it became a good bolognese. My friend across the river, she said she did the same thing with a leek. She had a leek in her refrigerator, and she had a potato, and she turned it into a potato leek soup.
There you go.
But you can just Google. You can just Google the word leek and what to do with it, and you're going to get some easy choices.
I love that. I love that. So what staples do you think we should have on hand that will help us be better prepared to cook from our refrigerators and cupboards? Are there any staples that you suggest?
I have a long list.
Okay.
But if you put these things in your pantry, fridge, and freezer, it can help you to be able to concoct for quite a long time. And so therefore you would be reducing the number of trips you make to the store, reducing your risk of being around people, because this COVID pandemic comes from an invisible enemy. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen handy, I'm going to divide up this shopping list for you And if you can get these things in your pantry, you could be set for quite a long time.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I say just go ahead and spit them out, and then maybe later we can put that on our Facebook page or the NOIAW website.
Okay. So I categorize the first category as dry goods. And that could be canned items,
Okay.
bagged items. That would be canned salmon and tuna. For people who hate canned salmon and tuna, of course, you don't have to put that on your list. I love sardines. I forgot to say that, but you could add that too.
Okay.
Canned beans of a variety of kinds, black beans, white beans, chickpeas, cannellini, black-eyed peas, red kidney beans, button beans. They could be combined into a wonderful chili, and I have a recipe for that I will leave with Giovanna to put on the website.
And I
Or
love a good chili. Thank you.
Yeah, or they could be used individually,
Okay.
turned into anything. And we can go over that. We're going to be talking about some recipes later in this discussion. Tomato paste,
Mm-hmm.
canned sauce, whole plum tomatoes, tomato puree, boxed broths, which I never use. I always make homemade broths, but I know a lot of people use boxed broths and they're quite delicious.
Yeah.
Some of them are lower in sodium than others.
Mm-hmm.
You can get chicken broth, you can get a vegetable-based broth. It's easy to have in your cupboard and non-perishable. Dried fruits like craisins, raisins, mangoes,
Love those.
condensed milk, Parmalat. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a milk in a box that lasts for a long time. Powdered milk. These milk products can be in your pantry for quite some time. They're non-perishable. Pastas. You could have refrigerated pastas like gnocchi or cavatelli, or you could have naturally dry pastas. Rice, peanuts, peanut butter, all kinds of nuts, walnuts, pine nuts, of course, olive oil.
Yes.
And I also keep corn or canola. Those are what I would call the dry goods.
Okay.
Then I have what category is the fresh vegetables, which obviously you know what they are. But the ones that last longer are the hard ones, like cabbages, red cabbage, green cabbage, Savoy cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, radishes. These also happen to be considered the cruciferous vegetables. They're the ones that have elements in them that are anti-cancer. And there's carrots, celery, potatoes, both white and sweet, onions and garlic, peppers, and I have to say asparagus. A friend of mine told me yesterday about an asparagus recipe that she and her husband made, which I can talk about later or I can talk about now, whichever, but it's asparagus season.
Okay.
So whatever you can find in season is going to be particularly tasty and particularly nutrient rich because it hasn't been hanging around.
Right.
This particular asparagus dish is basically turned into a puree and it's garnished with the tips. So I can tell you about that in a minute. Then there are dried herbs and spices, ginger included, because fresh ones like parsley and cilantro, they don't stick around as long as the dry stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing I just learned. I never knew there was a difference of getting some vegetables that actually last longer. The harder they are, the longer they last.
Yeah, making it easy for you. It's also season really now. If you have a yard, a balcony, any kind of piece of land, a place to put a flower pot, it's a good season to dig into and grow herbs of your own.
Yeah.
They grow easily. Basil, parsley, rosemary, thyme, tarragon, sage. You can put them all in the same pot. They'll kind of meld into each other, but it would be like a potpourri. And then vinegars of a variety of kinds, sherry vinegar, rice vinegar, red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar. It's good to have these things around and they last a long time.
They do,
And
definitely.
the category of frozen is self-explanatory, but I added pot stickers to my repertoire, something new in the last month, because they was almost sort of like a complete meal in that they had chicken and veg in a gummy ravioli type wrap, and they were easy to have around. And then the one last category I call proteins, which if you have a few chopped meats in your refrigerator, turkey or lean beef or lean pork, shrimps, scallops, fish, you can make a million different dishes, hot or cold, and you can concoct very, very easily. The name of the game is to sort of inventory your shelves and your refrigerator and your freezer periodically.
All of this food talk is already making me hungry again. So I have a question. Does having staples set minimize, does it minimize us from over shopping and spending while maximizing nutrition?
Yeah, I think that having a shopping list and knowing what you have and don't have does help to minimize waste. Sometimes we have things in our pantries we don't even know we have, and then we come to times like this and we're like, oh wow, a can of artichoke hearts. Let me check the date. Check the date, because I have been known to have things in my pantry from the year of the flood. I don't know why, but I discard them. When in doubt, throw it out.
Right.
And thin your pantries and buy fresh and label things, put your own dates on things as to when you bought them. It helps to minimize waste. Sometimes you have something in there that came in a gift basket. For whatever reason, you may have gotten a variety, and it's something that you may not necessarily have used in the past, like a pickled jardiniere of vegetables.
Yes.
And then if you Google pickled vegetables, you're going to get some ideas on what you could do with that. You could mix that with your red cabbage that's now in your house and never was before. Chop up the red cabbage, mix in the jardiniere, maybe throw in a small handful of raisins, because dried fruit is calorically dense.
Oh, okay.
And so you want to read the label and know what you're doing.
Yeah.
We can overdo dried fruit very easily, but at the same time, it sweetens a dish easily. I put about 10 craisins in my oatmeal this morning. With
I love craisins in a salad.
Yeah, really good together.
Well, let me ask you, when we do go and venture out to the grocery store for our stock up or our fill-in shopping trips, what are some of the tips that we can put in place that will help us become better shoppers? Because sometimes, you know, some of us might get there and we're like, oh, but there's this, and we might change our minds, or it might be just like some last minute decision to buy something bad.
Yeah, well, usually last minute decisions to buy something bad means you went hungry.
Okay.
So if you go to a store that provides tastes, that's going to help. Most stores don't do that, but there are some stores that do that, which is really a very clever idea, because if a person satisfies some of their tastes, they're going to browse the store a little bit more. I mean, it used to always be to shop the perimeter of the store, because that's where all the fresh foods are. And it's still that. But during COVID, when we're not actually frequenting the store, or we're having a shopper shop for us if you're getting a delivery, or you want to get in and out quickly, you're going to be shopping the entire store, including the canned goods and the frozen goods. So it's an unusual time. I mean, generally speaking, the perimeter of the store has the fruits and vegetables, if you think about it.
Right.
They're all designed kind of the same way. Then you kind of go down into the fish zone and the meat zone, and you wrap around into the dairy zone, and then the eggs and the cheeses and all that. And yeah, so all of that is good, but so are canned items right now because they last.
Yes. Okay. Very good. So, we're hearing more about better for you organic foods. However, sometimes these foods can be costly. What are your thoughts on organic foods?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And if I could take just one moment to backtrack to the last question, I just want to add in something that my mother-in-law used to do. When
Okay.
she saw red peppers on sale, your question was about minimizing waste and how to shop the supermarket, and how to not go off course from what your intentions were. If she saw that it was red pepper season and red peppers were in abundance, on sale, and beautiful, she would buy a bushel, which is a lot,
Wow.
and roast them,
Okay.
and then hand out roasted peppers as gifts,
Oh
which
my gosh.
we loved. And you can freeze roasted peppers. And I have a few bags in my freezer because that's something I learned from her. So you can go off track a little in the supermarket and pick up something in abundance that you didn't think you were going to. And that's perfectly fine, because we don't always remember what's in season.
Right.
We live in a life where watermelon is available in January. So we don't really always know what's in season.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to now to swing back to your question about
No problem.
organic.
Yeah.
Well, I know my children love the word organic, and they would question my lack of dedication to the word organic.
Okay.
I agree that, first of all, the definition of organic is that a food must meet the standards set by the United States Department of Agriculture. And the United States Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administrations, these are organizations that developed out of a need to protect people from bad food long ago. When I had a brief stint of living in the Washington, D.C. area, I did manage to go to a great presentation from the FDA on how they evolved. And that's what I learned, to protect people. So when an item is organic, it's grown and processed differently. Animals are not given antibiotics or growth hormones.
Right.
Before a product can be labeled organic, it has to be government certified and inspected to be able to meet the USDA standards. And usually the label natural does not mean organic. It actually means very, very little. And the other thing, it's organic is commonly seen with fruits and vegetables, and that means that they don't have pesticides or fertilizers, and or synthetic ingredients, and they're not bioengineered or radiated.
Right.
So naturally, all of those words are words we don't necessarily want to be part of what we ingest. But if our budgets are such, or the availability of organic food are such that we don't have access,
Yes.
or we can't afford them on a regular basis. I remember my grandmother soaking vegetables in cold water.
Really?
Yeah, and then when it came time to cook them, she would wash them in warmer water. And adequate washing can help to remove pesticides and fertilizers and some of the evils that non-organic foods have. I will also add that the meat industry, the poultry industry, they're on to us now. They're on to this movement towards organic, and they want to be part of it. So they're taking the hormones out and the items that we don't want anymore. And then the other thing is that you might be able to shop more locally for things that are organic and negotiate prices because you are a local person who may be on a limited budget.
Right. So I like that. So it's they're listening to the population. They're listening to the people saying, we don't want that in our food. We don't need, our meat with a side odor of antibiotics or our vegetable with a side odor of pesticides. They're listening, and it sounds like they're following through. So I really like that. I like the way you put it.
Yeah, I think they are listening, and we have become a society that wants to shop locally. And if we can, we will. And if we can't, during times like COVID, you have somebody else shopping for us, then you have to be a plan B kind of person pretty much your whole life, because things don't always go the way that you think they should.
Right.
To tell you the truth, I researched a little bit about organic in the recent past because it became such a buzzword. Celery is a really good example because celery is a blah food with crunch that most of us throw in chicken soup, and many of us do nothing more with it. But I learned that, and you're constantly learning, that celery holds a lot of pesticides and dirt, but is worth eating. So you soak it, get the pesticides off, take off some of those strings, and then you've got an item that's 10 calories a stalk, rich in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, folate, potassium, manganese. So it's worth a scrub, even if you can't find it organically.
Right.
And that's just one food item. I mean, we can go through all kinds of food items. We can go through all kinds of nutrients. I mentioned a handful of nutrients. Each nutrient could make up its own presentation. But so that's I don't think that people who can't afford organic or don't have access don't have to necessarily feel that they are hurting their bodies.
Okay.
There's a way, again, you can Google. There's a way to cleanse the item so that it's good for your body.
I like that. So there's a way. I like knowing now that it doesn't always have to be organic. I can just pick the conventional. And speaking of that, what foods are important to purchase, or are there foods that are important to purchase that should be organic versus the standard conventional? And if so, why?
Well, vegetables, another interesting word. I had a mom who lived to 92.
Oh, wow.
And I had a nephew who used to say to me, Auntie, I didn't know you could live to 92 not liking vegetables. My mother would push the vegetable to the side of the dish and eat a protein portion as big as my head. And she lived a long life. So, but there are the exceptions to the rule. I don't know why. Nobody knows why. The big push is for vegetables. To answer your question, vegetables, green leafy, cruciferous, a variety, colorful, red cabbage, orange carrots, orange sweet potatoes, a variety of colors are what's healthy for us.
Okay.
And some people can't tolerate vegetables raw. They can only have them cooked.
Right.
So however you can tolerate them. I'm going to go back to that asparagus thing now because it's in season right now. A lot of vegetables are coming in season, but that has a very short-lived season.
Asparagus. Okay.
And you can get that locally these days and look up recipes. The soup that my friend made, they discarded the bottom, boiled it, used much of the stem and boiled that, and mixed that with sauteed onions and some seasonings, salt and pepper, and then blenderized it to be creamy, and then took the tips, which they had removed earlier, cut them in half, and when it was nice and hot, put the tips in so that they sort of steamed done. And
Right.
apparently that made a creamy soup. I like to mix potato with zucchini and onion, just 3 items: potato peeled, zucchini with the skin on, and onion chopped, and in a little water. And then after that's done, I put that in the blender or food processor,
Right.
or immersion blender, and make a cream soup out of that. Then when you serve it, you can chop up some red onion if you tolerate it, or some scallions if you tolerate it. Dress up the top with that. You can put a dollop of either sour cream or skim milk yogurt on top of that. And then I like things hot and peppery, so I might sprinkle some red pepper flakes on top. And then when you mix that all together, it's quite delicious and quite low calorie.
I like the low calorie part. I don't know about the red pepper. I think I'm already feeling heartburn just with you saying red pepper.
A lot of people get agita from red pepper, so it's optional ingredient.
Got it. Got it. Well, right now I'd like to invite our viewers to tell us what they have in their homes right now. Maybe if they want to share something, if they have like a leftover vegetable or fruit or anything that maybe Denise can come up with something healthy and tasty, some healthy and tasty ideas, or just show Denise some love. So if you're enjoying this live stream with NOIAW, just show Denise some love on there. How about that? And so while we're waiting for our viewers' feedback, can you tell us a few or just a couple of your favorite go-to recipes?
Well, yeah, it's you never stop learning.
Yeah.
And during this, one of the gifts that came out of this COVID pandemic for me was that my 2 daughters, their husbands, an infant, a 2.5-year-old, and a 14-pound puppy dog came to live with me for a month. And they're all incredible chefs. So we had some amazing food. So a couple of the things I'm going to talk to you about, I've never made, but I'm going to make. And
Okay.
some of them were concoctions. Like my daughter Elena had a vegetable soup that she made twice. I would request it when I felt that maybe I had a slice of thick, great, crusty Italian bread too many, or a second portion of homemade gnocchi that I could have restricted myself to 1 portion of. And so to balance it out, we throw in a nice low-calorie, delicious, hearty vegetable soup. Her vegetable soup, as she puts it, she cleans out all the veggies in the fridge that look like they're not going to make it much longer.
Right.
And you don't want to waste them. And she puts onions and carrots and celery and zucchini. And basically she starts by sauteing the onions and the carrots, the celery till soft, then throws in a chicken broth. I happen to have frozen chicken broth and frozen corn broth in the freezer. So she used that, but you can use a boxed. And then you let that simmer a little bit. Then you can throw in some chopped potatoes. If you have a Parmesan rind or any kind of rind, a Manchego rind, any kind of rind is really good in a soup. You throw that in. And then on the side, she would take a can of beans, saute them with a really good oil, salt and pepper, and then puree them in the blender and throw that into the soup. And then she would take some green leafy thing and chop it up and throw that into the soup. You cook that a little bit. You serve the soup with a drizzle of olive oil at the end, because that's when you get the benefits of the essential fatty acids.
Okay.
The olive oil isn't heated up. It's fine to heat it up for sauteing, but you get a drizzle of a really good quality.
You're so resourceful, Denise, by the way.
And then a little sprinkle of Parmesan, and you serve that with nothing else. It's very hearty and filling. So that was one recipe. Another recipe that I got turned on to, which I have not made yet, I was describing the ingredients to my daughter, and she knew right away that it was called a romesco, roasted pepper romesco.
Okay.
And it's from Spain. And I thought it sounded marvelous. Basically, you roast a red pepper, you roast a few tomatoes, or else use whole plum tomatoes. It contains olive oil, kosher salt, toasted nuts. The nuts could be almonds, pine nuts, hazelnuts, or walnuts, chopped parsley, smoked paprika, sherry vinegar, chili powder or red pepper flakes, and chopped garlic.
All
It
right.
basically all gets thrown together and then pureed. And it is so delicious. I think your dog likes the recipe.
I think he's drooling. Might be drooling. You mentioned the word food and he's already drooling.
So I haven't made this yet, but it sounds so good to me, and it sounds pretty easy. And really, it's concocting in a way, just throwing in all these things into one pot. You start by roasting a pepper and roasting the tomatoes and roasting the nuts. But then after all that, they get thrown together. It's so good looking.
I'm gonna say, like, I think Willie, come over here. Come join Denise. Come here. All right, I think we're gonna have him join in. Do you have any dog recipes? Actually, to be honest with you, the vet already said he's 7 pounds overweight, so I might be calling you for some healthy recipes. These all sound really good though, Denise. And do you think that maybe you could pass those along to us so that we can share them on Facebook or NOIAW website?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my God, these sound great. So before we go, I want to, I've got a couple more questions for you. Actually, let's go ahead and knock out some of these viewer questions. We can knock some of those out real fast. All right, let's see. Do you have any recommendations about honey versus sugar is one question. And then another one is, oh my goodness, I just saw another question here. Let's see. I believe chickpeas. Do you have anything on the top of your head for, someone who has chickpeas left over in their cupboard?
Okay. So honey, regarding honey, if you can find a place that's local and purchase local honey where the bees are kept on the land and that they convert to honey.
Yes.
Bees don't convert to honey, but they convert the shrubbery, if you will, to honey. That would be the best thing, because that helps you to be anti-allergic to the local pollen.
Oh.
So that's best to see if you can stay local with honey. So there is a medicinal value to honey versus sugar.
I'm always learning something new from you. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Glad to hear that. And then regarding chickpeas, well, that's easy. You can just Google that. You can roast them. When you roast them or even saute them on the top of the stove, they become nutty and they could be cooled and eaten as a snack. You can throw them into the blender with a little water, a tiny bit of oil, and make them into a puree and have that be the base of a dish. It could be a pasta like a cavatelli or a gnocchi, or it could be even potatoes. You can combine any starch with any vegetable and any bean and have a vegetarian dish in an easy way. I wanted to also, before we left, I wanted to introduce you to these flowers that I picked from my garden just an hour ago. And this idea that flowers can be food. These are clovers, and anything that pollinates in your garden is very good for biodiversity, bringing bees and hummingbirds, and usually good for you. If you Google certain flowers, they are also edible and good in your diet, rich in nutrients, especially fresh picked. And there's a lot of them: nasturtiums, marigolds. There's a lot of edible flowers that might be right outside. There's a lot of things right outside your door in the woods that you don't know about that are actually good foods. And perhaps at some later date, I can introduce you to some of those items as well.
Yes, absolutely. This is fascinating because you're only the second person in my life that told me that they've eaten flowers. And the first one is my 88-year-old neighbor who said during World War II, they would eat tulips. I believe he said tulips or tulip bulbs because they were hungry, and that's what they did in Belgium, apparently. So,
Yeah.
wow.
There are many edible flowers and many edible, like things like sage, which is an herb.
Yeah.
If it's a nice wide flowered sage, it can be prepared batter dipped like you would a zucchini stick, and it makes a really nutritious snack.
Wow, that's amazing, amazing. So let me ask you a couple more questions while other viewers' questions come in. And again, if you guys, want to show Denise some love, go ahead and, send some love now, whether it's a comment or a heart or a like. Denise was with us a couple of weeks ago on May 15th, and she is an advocate of starches. You just reminded me how you mentioned putting foods and pairing them up with starches, and that just reminded me of your humorous live discussion we had.
Benching a potato for 40 years.
Oh my goodness. All right. So the next question we have for you is, kids can be picky. And, we've all had some kids or niece or nephew that we've learned can be picky eaters, but what should moms and dads always have in the cupboards or in the refrigerators to make sure that, that are a part of their children's daily meals? And what kid-friendly items should we always have on hand at home?
So, your question about kids makes me think of a million things. So first, we all change.
Yeah.
All the time. A child that may have been a good eater early on, all of a sudden at 3 years old is too busy to be a good eater and becomes picky. I know somebody who only had date nut bread and cream cheese for age 3 and age 4, but that person loves tripe and broccoli rabe and and everything now and later in life. So children change, adults change. Food is a very, very delicate subject matter because you can make a child nervous by being on them. You got to eat, you got to eat, you got to eat. Milk is a very, very important component of the diet. And yes, I understand there's a small percentage of lactose intolerance out there. I do get that. And those children have other needs. But if your child is not lactose intolerant, milk is really very vital. So if a child is distracted at, say, 2 and 3 years old, you can, I have my plate again, my friendly little plate. You can plant this plate anywhere, on a chair, on the table. No, the child might need to eat earlier than you do, and put 3 interesting items in here, not in abundance. 2 green beans, 5 chickpeas, and an ounce of, or a homemade chicken nugget. My kids used to love chicken nuggets. And when I gave presentations at their schools, they always invited me at 2:20 before the kids were going to go home. And that's when children are hungry.
Oh, yeah.
To know these things about children. So I knew they weren't going to listen to a word I was going to say unless I fed them. So I would go in with a bucket of homemade chicken nuggets, which I got permission to do. Yes. And everybody had 5 chicken nuggets on their plate, and they looked at me and listened attentively. So you have to just understand a lot of psychology about children. You should never use food as punishment, never use sweets as a reward. And you can Google articles about that, how to help your child have a good relationship with food.
I like it. I like it. And I love that plate that you shared, because that was the same plate you shared last time.
Yeah.
The live discussion, and you showed us, this is a 1950s plate, and you showed us where the meat was supposed to be.
Yes, in the small part.
In the small part, which is not what we're used to today, at least at the restaurant.
Starch and the other small part, and the veg. in the largest part, which can be 2 veggies.
Wow. All right, let's, you said you'd share some of these recipes. Do you mind sharing some of your favorite cookbooks as well? And, favorite websites maybe, or anything that you use for your healthy ideas and healthy recipes for us to share on NOIAW's website?
So I will put those, I will give you those for your website. I will say that I don't have a favorite. I use everybody's ideas and I listen to what people make and I try to duplicate them. And I'm not dedicated to following a recipe just as it's written. I'll like I made a banana bread last week. Now that's a simple thing to make, but I didn't want it sweet and I didn't want it fatty. So I modified the recipe. It called for a whole stick of butter. I reduced that to a quarter of the stick and replaced that with a tablespoon of canola oil. It called for a cup of sugar. I didn't really want to put any sugar because I knew I could sweeten it with an extra banana. And then I had some strawberries that were going to go by. So I cooked them in very little water and I used the strawberries and the water to sweeten the banana bread. And you wouldn't know that it had less fat and no sugar. It was very good. And I threw a bunch of walnuts in for crunch. So I Googled banana bread and I kind of glanced through the ingredients, and I don't follow anything exactly the way the recipe says, but I understand for people who are just starting to cook that that's the best way to do it for them. But you can modify. But some of my favorite things don't even need a recipe. Like a head of broccoli. If you're home or gardening or puttering or doing laundry or whatever, you put it on with some water, keep the water level constant. That will break down into a cream.
Gotcha.
You put a bunch of garlic in there with it when it's breaking down and you smash that and that becomes a sauce. The same with peas. Peas you can cook in a tomato sauce and throw it on pasta. That was a staple of old world Italians. It was called pasta pizzelle.
Okay, yes.
And my daughter made ricotta gnocchi. I couldn't believe how easy it was. A couple of eggs, ricotta, flour, salt and pepper. She mixed it all together. I might be missing one ingredient, so you have to look it up. She mixed it all together and then cut pieces, formed logs, and made gnocchi. You mix that with grilled vegetables if you want. If you have a grill, if you don't have a grill, you can broil them. My other daughter made a topping for some bluefish that we caught. The topping was onions, garlic, capers, tomatoes, lemon, wine, and a drizzle of olive oil. And she let that simmer, and then we baked the bluefish, somewhat plain, and served it and put the sauce on top. So it was lean and mean.
Okay.
Shrimp is another, shrimp and scallops, if you have access, even frozen, can be made with vegetables, if you'd like to combine, like a jambalaya type thing with chicken sauce. Yeah.
Yes. And going back to your thing about kids being, I just thought of this to, kid-friendly items and how kids' tastes change. I remember, I'm a fan of asparagus now, but as a kid, I detested asparagus.
Right.
So, find it funny how things change. We do have another question real quick, Denise, if you could answer this one. How do you feel about almond milk?
Well, I think it's healthy for you if you like it. If you're lactose intolerant, it's fine for you. Many items are enriched. It is enriched with calcium and vitamin D, which is essential for bone development. There's no reason to turn to almond milk exclusively. I mean, you can use coconut milk, almond milk, cow's milk. My idea is to keep things varied so that you get the nutritional benefits each item is going to give you different nutritional benefits. So ideally, that would be the way to go. Use them all.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So, I think I like that. So we can use almond milk. What about coconut milk? I tend to use coconut milk every now and again, just because I like the taste of it.
I don't remember the recipe one of my daughters made in this past month, but it was coconut milk based. And again, if you Google coconut milk, I believe it had either curry or turmeric, and it might have been mixed with vegetables, and it's all coming back to me. And it might have been mixed with a buckwheat noodle. It was a completely different dish than I'm accustomed to making. But if there's one ingredient that you want to just try to make something with, you just Google that one item and see what comes up, and then what appeals to you. I don't have coconut milk in my cupboard as a matter of routine, but I might in the future.
There you go. Never know. I tend to use it for coffee. So
must be flavorful.
It is. It is. And I noticed since using the coconut milk, I don't use sugar either anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, you can train yourself into liking something or away from liking something. I didn't like broccoli rabe till I was 36 years old. I made it for everybody. I cooked it. I found it bitter. I didn't like it. And then somewhere along the line, I got a less bitter batch. And I said, oh, this is really pretty good. And the other thing that I do that most people don't do because it's time consuming, some people don't find it necessary at all, I peel the stems of both broccoli and broccoli rabe. I find the stems to be sweeter. And then, but that's a commitment. You have to sit down and relax, maybe watch TV or whatever. But when I mix the stems in with the broccoli rabe, it makes it a tiny bit sweeter. So I didn't like that till 36, and I hated lentils until my adult life, and now I love them.
Me too. I mean, it's funny how things change. Like even as an adult, it's not like, oh, when I was a child and then I became an adult, I finally started liking broccoli. In your case, no, it took a little while.
And going back to children are no different. Once they get turned on to sweets, it's really hard to want anything but sweets. I mean, even animals and seagulls and birds, everything likes sweets.
Oh, for sure.
And so the name of the game is to not have them available, so that when you say, I don't have any, you're not lying.
Right.
You know, when the child says, I want whatever, and you say, I'm sorry, we don't have any right now.
Yes.
And then you could show the child that you're not lying. You can't lie because they're smart.
Or lie to yourself, Denise. I do not keep sodas or sweets in the house just because I know I'll go eat them.
Yeah.
And I tell myself, okay, if it's going to be about balance, then I'll have it when I'm out, at the restaurant or the ice cream parlor.
Right. It's a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. So you'll share with us. You promise you're going to share with us your recipes and
absolutely
cookbooks and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of wonderful chefs out there, and it would be remiss of me to focus in on one, but I'll give you a list of the ones that I like and the ones my children have turned me on to, because the new recipes, like my daughter turned us on to, because one of my daughters had a birthday during this time they were with us, and she turned us on to an angel food cake, strawberry shortcake, and it was nutrient rich. It was light. I didn't have cupcake liners, so she took parchment paper and designed it into a cupcake liner and made these angel food cakes, fresh whipped cream and fresh strawberries. Not a lot of cream, but a lot of strawberries. So it ended up being a nutrient rich, healthy dessert.
Wow.
Hardly any sugar.
She can come over to my house anytime. I like that.
Which you can do with your children as well.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And all this talk about food, I'm sure the viewers are getting hungry too. I'm sure the viewers are like, okay, now I need to go to the grocery store. Okay, I need to find something to eat. Just because all of this talk is, even though it's been healthy, it's very mouth-watering. So I appreciate, I appreciate you sharing all of your tips and ideas with us. And I'm so glad you're a NOIAW member, because you are a valuable member to us. So I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but before we go, I want to thank our audience for watching. If you'd like to see today's discussion or May 15th discussions with Denise, you can find them on our website at noia.org. Denise, we really appreciate, your support and your time, and we just hope you really stay safe during this time.
Thank you so much, and you as well. Stay safe, everybody.
All right. Thanks. And I'll probably be calling you personally.
Awesome.
Okay.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Bye.